comes to what happens to our soul after the human body passes, it is different for everyone, and it kind of just depends on who the person is, where did they originate from, right? Because yes, we're all connected to source, but they could be in a different maybe universe, and then that's a whole nother thing. But essentially, when our body is done, there's usually this cord connected to our soul, and you'll see that when you maybe astral project or you're dreaming, you'll always feel this connection to your body. Well, that connection, that cord will sever. So you'll know, right? When that happens, this is where it can get kind of iffy depending on who it is, but ideally you'll acknowledge, okay, I see what's happening, I have passed over. Then usually, ideally, what would happen is they would be greeted. And most everyone is greeted. I don't want anyone to be fearful of that. But sometimes that's where it gets complicated, because depending on the person, it depends if they are going to be open to receiving or going to be a little bit more hesitant and being like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. So, but ideally, you'll be greeted. You'll be greeted by your loved ones, usually, because that's what you know. When you're greeted by your loved ones, you are through this review stage, is what I like to call it. It's also a period usually when the funeral is. You get to kind of tie up maybe a little bit loose ends, like maybe a little bit of karma stuff, but don't get hooked on that either, just because that's what the next lifetime is for. Usually none of us are gonna leave this planet with no karma. If you do, congratulations, you completed your job. But the review process, that can take X amount of time depending on the person. Then usually, ideally, they just go to the other side, reconnect, and they get to meet their angels and their guides, and they're connecting back to the universe. And then again, timing may be different. And then ideally, they would come back and continue on their soul growth, essentially. Okay, so spirit personalities. Well, they're just that. They're definitely personalities. How they were in this world is a lot how they're going to show up when it comes to a mediumship reading. But here's the important part. When they show up for you, sometimes they're showing up for you to validate your experience and that y'all's experience together. Now, they grow when they're on the other side. They have a different point of view. They learn some lessons. They learn some things. So if they come out saying maybe they're sorry, maybe they say I love you for the first time, maybe they just seem a little bit different, a little bit more high vibrational. I just want you to know that that is still part of them. We are all on a soul journey. They just may have not got that while they were here. But essentially how they were here is exactly how they're going to show up in spirit world. For example, I think the most common thing that I see is religious people, and when their kids come and see me, they usually stand a little bit more back. They're usually watching first before they kind of interact, so you'll see still the same personalities, but just know that their point of view may be a little different because of what they have seen after they have passed. As a medium, I get all the time, is my mom my spirit guide? Is my grandma my spirit guide? And I love your family to death, and I love your friends to death, and they love you to death, literally. But we are brought here already with our own spirit guides and with our own angels. They are here to give it's like a little extra spice. It's like a little cherry on top when they get to pass, because yeah, they're still gonna help you and they still want to be there for you, and they'll be there for you in those moments when you need them, and they'll lift you up, but they aren't written in necessarily your destiny of they're going to make or break what happens to you. They are very different than your spirit guides and very different than the angels that you have, and those two still play a different energy and a different vibe as well. So once you can connect, then you'll be able to tell the difference, and not one is better than the other. And this is important too, because I know when we lose someone, it's detrimental to everything. So it's okay to think of them as a guide, okay? Like, I'm not going to tell you that you can't think of them that way. They are very much there to help you, but they don't play that role in the universe. Why do they not play that role in the universe? Our guides and our angels have finished the process of their soul evolution. They have something that we do not yet have. And so it's very important that who is guiding us has already finished their job, so nothing kind of throws us off either. And not that your family or friends aren't good, but they're still learning. We're still on the journey together. So that's the biggest reason why they don't play that part. My mom had a reading once, and somehow I got brought in, and this medium said that my friend would be reincarnated in my life somehow. I don't know if it was my child or whatever. So I would love to touch base on just the reincarnation process, because I know a lot of people would love for their grandma to reincarnate as their child. One, that can happen, but I don't want you to hold on to that either. Sometimes your relatives will stay until most of that family that they knew have passed on before they continue their soul growth back on their earth plane, whatever it is. So keep that in mind. While yes, it can definitely happen, don't hold on to it, because that's also part of spirituality, is the flow of understanding that nothing is ours to begin with anyways. But if you feel like maybe your child, your cousin, this random person you met is reincarnated, it could be a great possibility. And I think that's really freaking cool.
I totally agree. I've been told multiple times, like, my mom would most likely reincarnate as a child. If I do have children, it would be a boy, which is interesting. So I would be interested to see her.
It's so cool, right? Because
yeah.
But I think that's the scary part of that. As a human, it can be very hard to let go of this person we have in our head and identify this new person as a new person. When we reincarnate, our souls, our journey is a completely different journey than what we had in the lifetime before. And so that's why it can be a little sticky when it comes to reincarnation, because this new person should not be held to the same. They're not the same. And I think that's important for a human who may be going through emotions that they don't understand, needs to know that you still have to treat this new person as a different person. They're different.
I have a question about that. So that is super interesting. And I just realized, like, what happens when they do reincarnate? Like, let's say like in like 15 years, I have children, and, I pop them out of me and they just grow. I feed them and water them every day. And they the guy who told me that, or there was like two people that told me that like my mom would come back. I wouldn't recognize it until they're teenagers, which makes sense. Like, let's say that like I have let's say in 13 years, I have a son who's 13. I start to realize he has very similar personalities to my mom. Could I still connect to her, like spirit, and ask her questions? Like, could I still go to a medium? Or is it like, once they've reincarnated, you can't speak to them anymore?
That's a great question. So when it comes to spirits who do reincarnate, and then having that family member still being able to go to a medium to connect with that person, that can 120% happen. So I do want you to know that. What they're connecting to at that point, and this is where mediumship can get a little bit tricky. And I feel though that a medium could tell the difference, but essentially you're connecting to the energy of that person and not the soul. And while they're they're the same, but they're different, right? So that energy of that person is still there, but their soul has transferred into a new life. So you can still connect with that energy, but their soul might already still be here. Make sense? I think this is where it can get hard too, is a lot of the times when it comes to reincarnation, not of the person who got left, right? How would this person feel if they thought that they weren't going to be greeted by that one person, right? Because that one person reincarnated how do you think that person would feel if they couldn't go back to that person? So I think when it comes to reincarnation, I feel that, and it is different for every soul, but usually it's longer than what we think. Usually it is, they won't reincarnate in your lifetime, most of the time, not all the time. But just keep that in mind, because I do feel like that could be a cut to the heart if someone thinks that they're not going to be greeted by their loved one. You are so going to be greeted by your loved one, okay?